Good evening, everyone, and warm greetings. This is Dr. Anand Shankar Raja, Assistant Professor. I work in the Department of Commerce, Christ deemed to be University, Bangalore, India. On behalf of the Department of Commerce, Christ deemed to be University, I invite you all for this pre-conference workshop on the theme, The Art of Conducting a Systematic Literature Review Using Elixir Research Platform. Today with us, we have a very renowned resource person, Vidyasagar Poddar. Mr. Vidhi is the Director, Blockchain, R&D Lab, Curtin University. He holds a PhD in computer science, and his research areas include energy management and informatics, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, social analytics, etc. Sir has conducted many workshops, and he also has his own YouTube channel. The workshop will span for about 1.5 hours, followed with question and answer session. The question and answer session will be moderated by Dr. Uma VR, Associate Professor, Department of Commerce, Christ deemed to be University. Let us all witness this knowledgeable session and enhance our research knowledge. We welcome you, sir, again, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. I just wanted to check with you, who is the target audience? Is it academics or researchers like students or PhD scholars?
So we have research scholars, faculties, industrialists, and students.
Okay, so it's a wide audience. Okay, I was not very sure. Okay, so I can accordingly speak. So thanks for the introduction. Maybe am I allowed to share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, all right. So thanks for this opportunity again. My name is Vidyasagar, and I go by Vidhi in Australia. It's a shorter name, short form of my name. Before I start the presentation, I need to give this disclaimer that this is my personal initiative. It's not affiliated with my employer in any form, and I'm using my personal resources for conducting this session. Okay, a bit about myself. I guess Anand has already introduced me a bit, but I'm a research academic at Curtin University, and my research areas are blockchain, smart cities, cybersecurity, smart grids, and so on. I have published over 160 papers in journals and conferences, and supervised over 20 PhDs in my career spanning 13-14 years. I have a YouTube channel, so I would suggest all of you to have a look at this. The channel name is Vidhi Poddar. You can scan this QR code if you like, or just directly search Vidhi Poddar in YouTube. On this channel, I have a lot of useful resources for researchers, either if you are a PhD scholar or an MPhil scholar, or if you are a research academic. So there is a lot of useful information for researchers on this channel. So have a look at it, subscribe to it, and then start following whatever I share on my channel. One of the very popular things on my YouTube channel is this 5-part series of conducting systematic literature review. So today, what I'm going to talk is probably 1.5 hour, is a very short version of what systematic literature reviews can be. If you look at these 5 videos, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, each video, like this video is 3.5 hours, this is 3 hours, 3 hours. So roughly 3.5 hours of each video. So there is a lot of information in this video series that you can learn. If you want to learn SLR in more detail, I recommend you review these 5 videos. And the way I have structured these videos is based upon writing different sections of your systematic literature review paper. Okay, so for example, this is about how to evaluate existing SLR papers. This is about research questions, keyword databases, inclusion-exclusion criteria. This is about synthesizing research. This is about writing discussion. So every video covers a specific and important aspect of writing your literature review paper. So I strongly recommend that after this session, if you are keen on writing a good research paper, a good systematic literature review paper, then you should follow these videos. Other than that, I have also developed a systematic literature review course that takes you even further from what is there available in these 5-part video series. And if you are keen on that, have a look at my website, vidhipoddar.com, and you can find information on this course. Many people have completed this course and have published their papers in tier 1 or A-ranked journals. You can also see I have a website called, I have an account on a review website called as Trustpilot. And after this session, I would request all of you to just leave your feedback on this website on how did you find my lecture today. Okay, so there are a lot of reviews about my courses, about my teachings, about my videos, and so on. So I would appreciate a few minutes of your time after this session to share your views and your thoughts on today's session. Okay. One thing that I always tell my research students or anyone in general when I'm talking about research is there are 2 elements to success in conducting research or in writing a research paper. And the first one is proper planning, and second is right and timely guidance. So if you have these 2 elements, it will lead you, you will be successful. So that is the core idea or ideology that I follow. So in doing that, I have, like I said, I've supervised over 20 PhDs in Australia over the last 10, 12 years. In that time frame, I have seen how research scholars progress with their PhD, progress with their research, and what are the areas where they kind of struggle. And using that experience, I have designed 2 things that help in the planning and that help in the guidance, which means that will lead to success. So these 2 things are, firstly, I have built a software platform for PhD researchers or for the whole university for that matter. And it is called as Elixir Research. And I will show you what this platform is in a minute. But what this is a PhD or a research project management platform that helps collaboration between PhD scholars and their supervisors. So that is the planning bit. So you can plan your research effectively using Elixir. And this is an example of guidance. So when you are doing your research, one of the key challenges that people find is they do not get proper guidance at the right time. Yeah, so in this context, one of the first initiatives that I have done is I have developed a course that I mentioned to you already, which is on how to do a systematic literature review. So this gives you a step-by-step guidance on what is it that you should do when you're writing a research paper, or in this context, a systematic literature review paper. So these 2 things working together provides you the right foundation that you need to complete your research and to complete your SLR paper. So I have set up Elixir Software Labs as a company that has built the Elixir Research, which is a PhD project management platform. It is currently in the beta phase. So if you go to this website, elixirapp.in, you will find a welcome, just a basic introductory page, and we are just seeking interest on this platform at the moment. There are a few universities in India who are currently working with us, and they're using this platform and helping us to build and refine this as we go further. And this is my systematic literature review course. Okay, so I want to start off with giving you start off the discussion on systematic literature review as such. And there is one video on my YouTube channel where you can see how a 2-hour video that takes you quickly through the whole process of doing a systematic literature review. And by following that, you will see how easy and how structured it is if you follow it the right way. The first thing, what is systematic literature review? Okay, so there are 2 types of review articles, broadly speaking, when you look at research articles published in good journals. One is a traditional form of a literature review, and then another is a systematic literature review. And the core difference between traditional review and a systematic literature review is that a systematic literature review follows a review protocol. And I will show you, I'll give you an example and teach you about Prisma as a SLR methodology or a protocol that is defined and that explains how we are going to conduct this review or conduct this research. So the steps that we follow while doing the literature review are systematically documented and reviewed by experts in the field before you start doing the systematic literature review. So that is what is a systematic literature review. When to do a systematic literature review? I would suggest if you are starting off with your PhD, the first thing that you should do in the first 6 months of your research, when you are kind of preparing your research proposal, systematic literature review should be done prior to that or during that time frame. In the first 6 months is what I recommend even my PhD students to do it, and then you should immediately publish your systematic literature review after that. Why is systematic literature review important? It is important because it gives you a very structured way to identify the research gaps. And that is very important for you as a research scholar, because you want to make sure that the research topic or the research question that you have selected for your research is verified, or it is genuine, that nobody else has done any work in that space. How is SLR different from traditional literature review? I think I already explained this, so I'll skip this bit. What are the pros and cons of a systematic review versus a traditional review? So in systematic literature review, you need to have a question that you want to answer. And there could be multiple research questions for a systematic literature review, but you should at least have one research question, and that you undertake a systematic review for answering that research question. A research protocol is required. So Prisma is one example of a research protocol, research methodology, SLR methodology that we can use. SLR or systematic reviews are structured and replicable. So if I follow the same protocol, I should be able to get the same results. Evaluation is objective. Data extraction process is objective. Research synthesis could result in a framework or a knowledge map. Time can be very long, and the reason for doing a systematic review is trying to find an answer. Unlike in traditional literature reviews, you can see that it may or may not be replicable. It is not structured. It could be subjective. It could be relatively short, and so on. How to do a systematic literature review? So there are basically 3 steps in conducting a systematic literature review, and that is planning, conducting, and reporting. So whenever you are starting your systematic review, you have to remember that these are the 3 main steps or 3 main phases when conducting systematic review, and we will go through these phases in this session today. So planning. The first question is it needed? So of course, planning is very important for doing a systematic literature review, because without proper planning, you may end up doing or conducting a systematic review which somebody else might have already done. So it is repeating a work, and you will then find it hard to publish that work. The next bit in planning is the review protocol. I have already mentioned a few times, Prisma methodology is what I will be covering today for the review protocol. And that is important because it gives you a template, a process to follow while doing your systematic review. And not only that, when you develop a review protocol, you have to have it reviewed by an expert in your field. So they can give you some feedback on how you're going to do your SLR, provide you some suggestions, and you can incorporate that in your protocol and then start your research. So many a times you will see that this is not conducted, not done in on a lot of times. In fact, I read SLRs published in the journals, and this review step is not followed. When you are conducting your SLR, you're identifying your literature, evaluating the literature, extracting information from the literature, and synthesizing new findings by evaluating the identified literature. So that is the process of conducting your SLR. And finally, reporting is when you share your findings from the SLR and write it as a research paper. So when we think about a systematic literature review paper, these are the standard headings that you should have in your SLR paper. Okay, so we have abstract, we have introduction, methodology, results or findings, discussion, limitations and future work, conclusion, and references. So when I'm personally when I am reviewing a research paper, a SLR paper, first thing that I would see is whether all these sections are there in the research paper or not. Yeah, that is important, because many a times what I see, the abstract, introduction, methodology, and results, till this bit, the paper is written very well. And then suddenly discussion, limitation, and conclusion is like just 1 page or 3/4 of a page, and then the paper finishes. That paper is incomplete. Yeah. So you can see on my YouTube channel, I have done a video on talking about how important each of these sections are, and what percentage of your paper should cover each of these different sections. So have a look at that, because that will give you some idea on how to write your research SLR paper effectively for a good journal. Okay, so now I will go through the I was going to say go to the Prisma methodology, but there is one slide before this. So when we are talking about SLR, right, what we are talking about is the words or the concepts that describe what we are doing when we are doing a systematic literature review are these: transparency, objectivity, synthesis, evidence, reproducibility, quality, terminologies, and knowledge map. Oh, sorry, it's not knowledge gap, it should be knowledge map. Okay, so these are the things that we are referring to when we are doing a systematic literature review. So a SLR should be transparent, it should be objective, it should synthesize the literature, it should have some evidence. Are you able to see my slides or not?
Yes, sir.
Oh, why is that?
Yes. Yes,
Okay, let me share it again.
yes, sir, we can see that.
Yeah, even I can see it.
Can you see it now?
Yes, sir, we can see that.
Yes, sir, we can see.
Yes, sir, we can see.
Okay, all right. I saw some chat message which said that they could not see. Okay, all right. So where was I? SLR terms. Okay, so now I want to talk about Prisma, Prisma methodology. Okay, so in Prisma, there is a Prisma is a methodology or a process that you can follow when you are conducting a systematic literature review. And as you can see on the left side here, I have got the typical headings from an SLR paper. And on the right side in the Prisma checklist, you can see the respective headings as well. For example, abstract is here, introduction, methods, results, discussion, and within discussion, they have limitations and conclusions. So when writing an SLR, all these things have to be covered, and they have to be covered in substantial or sufficient amount of detail, right? So when you're writing an abstract, typically a structured summary or a structured abstract is what is recommended when doing a SLR. So in this session, I will go through all of these steps and give you some examples of how research, how others have completed or written SLRs using or following these steps. Okay, so the first bit is here is the title. So one thing that we recommend when for a systematic literature review is that the paper should mention systematic literature review in the title. Yeah, many a times the paper is a systematic literature review paper, but the title does not convey that. So it is a good practice to have to include systematic literature review in the title of the paper. So if you are writing an SLR paper, make sure that you do that. All right, now the next bit is abstract. So when you are writing abstract, the best thing or the suggestion is that you do a structured abstract first. And when you're doing a structured abstract, these are some of the things that you can kind of cover in your structured abstract. But what may happen is some journals where you submit, their criteria may be that they just want an abstract in a paragraph format. So in that case, what you can do, you can just remove the headings from the structured abstract and just combine all the different sentences, and you will have a paragraph-based abstract. But make sure that you cover all these topics of the concepts in the abstract. So don't miss out on any of these things, because when we are writing an abstract, we want to convey the problem, convey the solution, convey our methodology, what were our key findings, what were the limitations, all that very nicely in the abstract, because that is what is going to gain the attention of the reviewers and the editors when you submit your paper for review to a good journal. So remember that it is very important. In the space of health or medicinal research, there is also a concept of systematic review registration number. This does not apply to a lot of, say, management or other disciplines like business, but in medicine space, this is a practice where you register that you are conducting, you or your team is conducting a systematic literature review on a specific topic, and you put that on a list. Okay, so point 3 is rationale. When you're doing a systematic review, you have to describe the rationale for the review in the context of what is already known. So you have to define the importance of the review question, which means firstly you have to have a review question, right, which I covered already earlier on. Briefly mention the current state of knowledge and its limitations. clearly state what this review aims to add to the knowledge base. Discuss how the limitations of existing reviews may be overcome by this review. And for that, one of the important things that I recommend everyone is to include a section of prior literature reviews in your SLR paper. And prior literature reviews give you and the readers the idea of what existing research questions have been addressed by other SLRs and how, what are the weaknesses of those, or what is missing in those SLRs, which is why you are now doing your SLR. So providing that context of what is already known is very important. And this is an important step in doing your SLR. Objectives. Provide an explicit statement of questions being addressed. So the questions have to be precise and explicit. And the reason for doing that is that you are going to put a scope around your SLR. So you're not doing everything, but you're doing whatever you have listed as your objective. And that is what you're going to do. That is going to be your narrow focus of the review. Because like I said earlier on, the review, the purpose of the review is to answer a specific research question or research questions. Okay, so that focus or the scope is very important. Framing research questions. So when you talk about, how to frame a research question in itself is a topic for another session, I would say. Yeah, I'll just give you a brief example, right, to give you the idea. What is the difference? Which is a better research question, right? What do we know about something? Yeah, what do we know about XYZ? Versus what can cause an increase or decrease in the possibility of XYZ? See, the second question is a bit more focused and directed. So when I'm searching for the literature on XYZ, I'm going to look for papers that talk about how to increase or the causes for increase or causes for decrease in something. So it not only helps me to narrow my attention to a research, to what I have to search, but it also makes me focus on answering that particular question. So the whole paper then focuses only on that bit. Versus what do we know about XYZ? It's a very broad question and very difficult. It's not impossible to answer, but you'll be inundated with lots of information from the research papers. Let's see some more examples. So here, so whenever I have got screenshots in my presentation, right, I have put the reference at the bottom here, so you can find that which paper this has come from. So here the objective is we aim to identify the level of adherence towards e-health tools among vulnerable groups. So it's a very focused question here, I would say. Similarly, we aim to establish how different design and implementation characteristics influence the level of adherence. So such questions are good research questions to formulate. There are some more examples from some other research papers as well. Next is protocol registration. So I mentioned about this, for example, in the medicine and health space, you are required to register your protocol with some authorities so that similar studies are not conducted by two different teams. But that is not the case for all other disciplines. So there is a risk for, I know in business management and computer science, there is nothing like that I know of. Okay, next we talk about eligibility criteria. So unambiguously specify what is the eligibility criteria. And basically what that means is what is included and what is excluded from our research and for what is the purpose for that. So we can exclude, so when I'm talking about what is included and excluded, I'm referring to the primary studies or empirical research that we are going to include or exclude in our SLR paper. Okay, so typically we look at the study characteristics and report characteristics. So this bit and here. So with study characteristics, we focus on research studies, and with report characteristics, we say that this report or paper should be published in a specific year range, it should be in a specific language, and so on. I'll give you some examples so you will see what I mean. So, for example, inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. So this criteria is important because we will use this as a guide stick when we are searching for literature and deciding which papers to include and which papers to exclude. So this is an example from this paper, and here they say we included studies that 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 criteria, inclusion criteria. So studies that examine the use of web-based technologies that were published in English, peer-reviewed journals in English after 2007, focused on people aged 18 or older, and so on. Similarly, we also have to mention the exclusion criteria. That is, if we are going to exclude specific studies from our for our SLR, then we have to mention that, and you also give a reason why. For example, here we say, here this paper says, we excluded studies with a qualitative research design, case studies, opinion papers, and literature reviews. So if it was a qualitative study, they excluded it from their selection. So they did not include qualitative papers. Okay, the next is information sources. So when you are deciding where you are going to search your literature, so this could be different databases. It could be, say, Web of Science, Scopus, or it could be Google Scholar. Depending upon whichever database or platform you are going to use to search for these research papers, you have to mention that clearly. Okay, present the full, the next is search. So when you're going to search papers, it is a best practice to have the full electronic search strategy. Basically, you will identify keywords to search for research papers, and you will put those keywords together to make a search query, right? A search string. And that search string is what you will be putting in, say, Web of Science, Scopus, or Google Scholar to search for research papers. So it is best practice to kind of exactly copy and paste the same search string that you have used on different platforms. And this goes back to the thing that I mentioned about replicability or reproducibility of your research. Anyone could take that exact search string, put it in that same database, and they should be able to get the same results. Okay, so that's why the searching for the right papers and sharing, reporting the exact search string is very important. For example, and then you will have the keywords and the search results that you get. So typically any SLR paper will have will have a figure or a flow chart of this style, right? Where they say our initial search was, say, for this, that gave us 384 articles. We did screen the papers based upon the title and abstract and excluded some papers. Then we did some literature, we did content analysis, that is, we read the paper, and then we again screened some more papers. And finally, from 384, we selected 192 papers to do the synthesis. So that kind of a process flow chart is important for including in a SLR paper. Let's see here an example of search strategy, study selection, and data extraction. So in this one, they say we conducted an electronic search in the following databases: PubMed, Web of Knowledge, EBSCO, and CINAHL. all databases were searched from 5th January 2017 to 5th January 2018. So for 1 year, they searched this database. To develop the search strategies, we checked two main set of keywords: e-health tools and their corresponding synonyms, health disparities and their corresponding synonyms, and so on. So this is how you would write the search strategy and the selection process, study selection and data extraction. Another example of this whole flow chart that I was talking about. This was the initial search, then they screened, then they applied their eligibility criteria, and finally how many papers they selected. So you can see the numbers can vary a lot. So here they had 473 papers, 1321 papers, and in the end, the final selection was only 29 papers. So if you have a good research and a narrow focused research questions, you will be able to get down to that narrow subset of articles that answer that research questions. Otherwise, you will be lost in these hundreds and 400 papers, because if your research question is too broad, you will get a lot of literature that you have to sift through. In this one also, it's very interesting. They say that from here, 111, they excluded these many papers, and then they gave the reasons why these papers were excluded. So it's a good way for you to also kind of follow something along these lines. Study selection, I talked about already. Data collection. Okay, how did you extract the data from papers? So describe the method of data extraction from reports and any processes for obtaining and confirming data from investigators. The author should describe these methods, including any steps taken to reduce bias and mistakes during data collection and data extraction. So once you have, say, these 29 papers, so how did you identify or screen or pick up the information that was required to answer your research question, to answer your
It's not only for, is it only? Hello, sir.
Sir, nothing is audible.
Sir,
It's not audible.
Is it audible now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry, I think something went wrong with my microphone. Okay, so what I was saying was, when you are extracting information from your selected primary studies, you have to explain how you are going to do that process of extraction, right? It could be as simple as saying that we will identify these factors from the selected papers, and we would record that or record that in an Excel spreadsheet, and all the co-authors or co-investigators will be also doing that and also reviewing that. So that could be a process that is incorporated, should be incorporated, and should also be reported in your SLR. Then this thing comes up typically in, say, in medical research or medical research is where risk of bias in individual studies. So somebody is speaking. Could you just please go on? Okay, thank you. So risk of bias is when just one person is extracting information from the primary studies, the individual bias can come in, saying that because it may be subjective, it's only one person extracting information, and that may result in a very biased extraction process. So typically what we do in such a case is that we extract information. The information extraction actually happens or is done by multiple investigators in your SLR when conducting an SLR. And one more question that I quite often get asked is, can I do an SLR just by myself, like a solo author? And the answer to that is no, you cannot, because that causes bias. So if there are no others who are screening the work that you're doing, or reviewing the data extraction from the different papers, it introduces significant bias. So typically you will see systematic review papers are always co-authored with 3 or 4 researchers. Okay, so item number 13 to 16 on Prisma are kind of out of the scope of this webinar, so I have not covered it here. But you can always go back to this this paper and review it in your own time. Study selection, I spoke a bit about earlier, and I showed you through that figure as well on how you select different studies for conducting your research, for conducting your SLR. Study characteristics. So this is important and very something that you will see in all good SLR papers published in good journals. And study characteristics is a process where you kind of identify selected information from multiple papers. And this information is the information that is going to be helpful for answering your research questions. So study characteristic table is very important and typically reported in multiple. So there could be multiple study characteristic tables reported in a SLR paper. So this is just one example. So basically, it's in this case, it says, say for example, diabetes. So there were 4 papers that were about diabetes in this section, in this paper. On obesity, there were 8 papers. On nursing, there were 2. Basically, you are chopping or packaging the literature, the research literature, into different kind of information buckets, right? So this is, here the literature is classified based upon the target population. Here the literature is classified upon the area of health, for example, diabetes, cardiovascular, and so on. Here the literature is classified based upon the sample size, where the sample size is less than 100, these studies, more than 100, these studies, and so on. Critiquing research articles. So this is a very detailed, how to say, process. So when you are doing a systematic literature review, one of the important things that you have to do is understand how you are going to criticize the literature. What is the process of doing that? And it's a very long, it's a completely different, a thorough topic that probably needs another session to cover, but I'm not covering it here. There's some information about this on my YouTube channel. So one of those 5 webinars that I showed you, I do talk about this. So I suggest you can go and have a look at that there, but that is an important step when doing SLRs. Okay, next what I want to cover is to take you through some case studies. Yeah, so I have taken a few examples here of some good SLR papers, and I will pinpoint or point out how they have written different sections or what is it that they have covered, so that it gives you an like a template of something to follow when you are writing your own SLR paper. Okay, so this is a paper, and whatever examples that I'm covering here are all open access papers. So you can later go and find these papers on your own. So addressing circular economy through design for X approaches, a systematic literature review. So here you can see in the title, they have this word, systematic literature review, like I mentioned earlier on. Okay, so here, where is the research question? So if you see here, the abstract is not a structured abstract. It is a paragraph type abstract. So we would need to find out where the research question is, or when I'm looking at this paper as a reviewer, I would want to find out what is the main aim or the objective of this research paper, of this SLR. So here they say the aim of this paper is exploring and understanding how design can contribute towards a CE transition through adoption of DFX approaches. So what is CE transition and DFX approaches? I don't know because it's not my area, but that is the research question for this particular paper. Now, when I look into their write-up, yeah. So here they say this part which is in the red is talking about the research question. Yeah. Little bit later on, they say the keywords circular economy and its main synonym end of life, as suggested by a recent systematic literature review on CE, were combined. So they took circular economy and end of life. And they have also given a justification of why they did this, because some other research paper or other SLR has used that. Okay. And they were then combined with design for X, DFX, or design guidelines. And that is what they used to search. So now where did they search? They searched in databases like Scopus and Science Direct. And they got, say, 402 and 339 documents through these databases. Then what did they say? They are removing redundancies. So from these 402 and 339, there would be some common duplicate papers. So those would be removed. Where was the information searched? Titles, abstract, and keywords were the three areas they searched for information when reviewing the papers. And out of these, this collection, they selected finally 31 papers. And that was based upon the relevancy. Okay, so by reading just this one paragraph, you can pick up a lot of information. Yeah. And if you're writing your SLR paper for the first time, maybe following a paper in your field and looking at how they have written their paper is a very good way to kind of start writing your research, your SLR paper as well. Next, they talk about the selection process. So how did they do the selection? Authors selected only those documents contributing to a real enhancement of DFX methods, and so on. Figure 1 shows the research strategy used. So like figure 1, it would be, I don't have it here, but it would be the figure like a flow chart that would have shown the different process of screening the documents. Search strings, Scopus and Science Direct, 741 results, and so on. Last 15 more documents were recommended by experts. So see, this is also an important step here. When I mentioned that you're preparing the protocol for review, you have to also get the SLR protocol reviewed by an expert outside. So that is an option here they have covered. How did they manage bias? So they have explained here that the entire process of selection and examination of documents was conducted by 2 authors, carrying it out autonomously to not fall in bias of analysis throughout the review. Finally, their results were compared and made consistent to each other, leading to the research presented in this article. So here they have taken one set of, 2 authors who looked at 31 papers, 31 articles.
Sir, not audible.
Where there were discrepancies between author 1 and author 2, they would have then decided or reached consensus on which ones to choose, and that's how they would manage bias. What is this? This is an example of keywords, and you can put it in a table like this. So design guidelines, circular economy, whatever was listed in the previous section paragraph is shown as a figure here. So keyword search and where the different databases that were used. Okay, so this is the figure 1, the research strategy. So here it shows when the scientific literature was searched, how how did they follow that process. Science Direct and Scopus gave them 741 articles. Cross-referencing gave 25. Individual hand search for 15 from experts. And that is how the whole process by which they selected the 31 articles. One more thing that you can also report in your systematic review is where were the studies conducted, in which countries. This is something you would probably mention in the first part of your results section. Here, the literature is now classified based upon, so this is an example of a study characteristics kind of table again. So here you can say, you can see they have categorized the literature based upon research type, which is theoretical assessment, case studies, action research, what method was used, whether it was a framework, guideline, whether it was a literature review paper or not. So different ways in which you can represent the literature in different categories or different buckets. This is showing the themes that they have identified from these 31 papers. So 15 papers were about circular design. Others were on circular design metrics, decision support, circular transition, and so on. So that was one paper. I want to cover one more paper to give you another example. This is from management and marketing. So in this paper, you can see the abstracted structure. So what is the purpose of the paper, of this research? What is the design methodology? What are the findings, implications, originality? So it's very nicely written here. And by reading the structured abstract, it gives you a very good understanding of the main contributions of this research. So here they have used 8-step process of conducting systematic reviews using Denier and Philbin. So these are the 8 steps. So what I covered earlier on in this session was on Prisma, which is another kind of a methodology for doing systematic reviews. This is their research strategy figure. Started with 6,000 and finally they chose 465 papers in this study. Their inclusion and exclusion criteria and the justification for providing this inclusion and exclusion criteria. So subject-wise, language, access, methodology, nature of the article. So here, like you can say, they have got all methodology, whereas the previous example that I gave, they only selected qualitative methodologies. So depending upon what you want to answer, you can kind of justify or document that in this form of a table. You could then also show your research themes in a graphical format, something like what you can see they have done here. But you can also have it without the quadrants as well. In this case, it makes sense because they have consumer producer on this axis and the pragmatic change approach versus radical change approach here. And then they have put the literature on those quadrants. So if it applies to you, you can do that. If not, even just having a representation like this is also quite useful. And if you can see, the bubbles here also reflect the size of the literature. So there are only 12 papers in this one, whereas there are 130 papers in this topic. So it's more, it's also represented using that. Some key research papers under each quadrant, 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants. These are some of the important papers, but there would be more as well. Research methodology you can show in a paper like this, in a table like this, where these are the qualitative studies, quantitative studies, mixed methods, and the subtopics, sub-themes within their papers that they have used. So one thing that you would see in a systematic review is there would be a lot of tables that you can add to it, in your SLR. Because that is a way of kind of synthesizing the literature in an easy to understandable format. And by doing that, it is easier for readers as well to get a good overall view of the literature. This is a table that shows areas of future research. So that's also a good way to kind of put it in the form of a table. And if I were, if I would be writing my SLR paper, I would go a step further here. So this is what is suggested as the future work. I would add another column here, and I would say methodology. And here I would write how I would suggest that this future research be conducted, whether it should be done in a qualitative way, quantitative way, or we should use a mixed method or design science. What is it, or how it is, how should that research be conducted? That information I would add further here as well, because that not only shows that I have given a thought about how the future research should be done. It's not that I just think that it should be done. I have thought about how it should be done, and giving that guidance, and that becomes useful for early career researchers or PhD scholars, because they have a guidance. So it's not only that you should do this, but this is how you should do it. That makes a big difference. I think I have shown this. And then there are a few relevant videos on my YouTube channel. I recommend you go and have a look. For example, many a times, if you do not have access to Scopus or Web of Science, how you can find high quality papers or good quality journals, for your research, you can watch this video. And so on, how to prepare. There are a few other relevant videos on my channel as well. And one thing I want to ask you, as I assume that most of you are, majority of you are academics, which of these apps do you use, for your research? And what I suggest is, when you are doing research, you should be equipped with all possible tools that are available for you to speed up your research, and try to get or start using these apps to just streamline your research and be more productive. Okay, so that concludes the presentation, the slide deck that I had. I mentioned to you, I was going to show you what the PhD platform that I have developed. So I will give you a brief view of that platform. So give me 1 second to switch. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right, so this is a platform that I have developed, which I call it as Elixir. And the core idea with Elixir is, it is a collaboration platform designed or built for PhD students or research scholars and their supervisors. So here you can see an example, like this is my account. I have 2 students, for example. This is a dummy account. So I have 2 students here who are my PhD scholars, and I can see them from here as well. And when I go through, say, for example, this student, I have developed a plan for him, for him to complete his thesis writing. So these are the 6 chapters that he is going to write for his PhD. We have sat together and we have developed the thesis layout, the chapter layout, what will be the different chapters chapters and the subsections that he has to complete. And then when he logs into his account, he can see all these tasks that are assigned for him to complete. And when I log in, I can see whether he has completed what was assigned to him or not. So for example, I can see now that for chapter 1, few items are overdue, but some are complete. Some are late submission, but which means it is still complete. In the literature review, late submission, some are overdue, and so on. So with this one, it is a very good way for the PhD supervisor and the PhD scholar to interact with each other and progress with their research, and also with their completing the research on time. So for a SLR paper, I have developed a very detailed template, abstract, introduction, methodology, tables, figures, results, and so on. So for example, if I go into introduction, if for example, you are writing your SLR paper and you do not know what to do or how to start writing your SLR paper or what you should write, this thing here will give you some guidelines or some steps that you can follow, plus say a deadline for submitting or completing this task and progressing with your SLR. So this is for introduction. What could you write in the introduction? Search existing SLR papers using Google Scholar, structure the introduction section, write prior literature review subsection for your introduction section, and so on. Similarly, when you have to write methodology, see, there are a lot of things that you have to write one after the other to actually make your methodology section very thorough and robust. So identify, planning, conducting, and reporting, study table of contents of existing SLRs, read methodology section, define your inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, and so on. And if you go inside, so this is just the listing, but actually you can go in and read a bit more information about that specific task. Let me give you another example. Let's see this one. Say, for example, review protocol validation. So here you can say research on how you will conduct your review protocol validation. To do this, you can refer to published SLR papers in your discipline. And for each specific activity, right, there is a comment section. So here you can communicate with your supervisor, leave some comments, and all the conversation that happens for a specific activity is all recorded at one specific point. Whenever there is a comment left, you will get a notification on your account, so you know that your student has replied to you, or you have replied to your student. Okay, so this is methodology. Then example of what different types of tables you can have in your SLR paper. Table for questions, for quality assessment, for keywords, and so on. Different figures, results. So writing an SLR paper is a very systematic way of doing writing. So when you are writing a SLR paper for a good journal or a top journal, A or A-star journal, these are all the things that you need to have completed properly with the right content inside. So this one does not give you any content of what it should be, but it gives you what needs to be done. And then you can review, you can look for SLR papers in your discipline and try to figure out what they have done for each of these items, say, that I have mentioned. This gives you an idea of what needs to be done. Yeah, and then you can go and do it. Okay, so that is the thing here. Within this Elixir platform, we also have the feature of chat. So like WhatsApp, you can chat, but the chat is only limited between you, your thesis committee. So you could chat with your supervisor, your co-supervisor, or the thesis team. Plus, we have incorporated the concept of Dropbox or Google Drive in here. So you can store all your files, everything at one point. The same thing can also be reviewed or viewed using a calendar concept. Yeah, so we have a calendar incorporated in Elixir, and basically the idea is that when you come to your lab to start your work as a researcher, you can see what has been assigned to you, and this calendar can be populated, can be filled by you yourself, or when your supervisor assigns you a task, it will get filled up here. So when I designed Elixir, my idea was that your PhD research has to be very systematic and planned. And the concept here with this is, because this is the final year student, so for him, I have only got a plan for his writing his PhD thesis. But this plan can be anything. It could be the plan from your first month of your PhD all the way till your completion of your PhD. What is it that you want to do every month, every week? So you can plan it, put it on Elixir, and make sure that you follow that plan and progress with your PhD. Okay, so that was a brief demo of the Elixir research platform that I have developed. Currently, few universities in India and in Australia are using it, and they are finding it quite useful, because it is not only good for student and collaboration, but it also becomes like a place where all your research information is there stored permanently. You can always go back, oh, what was it that I was discussing with my supervisor before? Rather than digging up all your emails, all that information is readily available through Elixir. Okay, and one more thing I want to show you is okay, so this is a systematic literature review course that I have developed, and here you can see again the difference between the course and what I showed you with Elixir. Elixir gives you the structure of what information you need in all of the different sections of your systematic literature review paper, and then you can go and either find out that information by reviewing other existing papers, or that kind of information is already there in this course. So for example, if you are writing the introduction section, see how to write a SLR paper, how to search SLR papers using Google Scholar. So there is a video that you can watch where I talk about how to do this. It will give you a very structured way, like what will you learn from this lesson? What is your research task? What is your writing task? What is your target? What resources you will have access to? What will you learn from this lesson? Okay, so you do this video, watch this video, and this is the activities that you have to complete. Similarly, say a next topic, how to structure your paper. So today I spoke about abstract, introduction, methodology, this and this. So there are videos on that talk about this and how you can complete and progress with your SLR paper. So it's a very comprehensive course. So introduction, within introduction, you have to write about prior literature reviews. So there are, say, 8 examples that I have given about how different papers write their prior literature reviews. What are some of the examples that you can follow when you are writing? What is your target after completing this section, and so on. Similarly, a lot of examples of research questions. For example, how to analyze research questions from existing SLRs is very important step. You can see examples like how I have shown you today in the session as well, of how you identify research questions, because it's a very important step. Similarly, importance of statistics in the introduction section. Again, many different slides and content. So if you see, this whole systematic review writing involves a lot of work that is required, to write a very good quality paper. I don't know, there probably are 150 or 160 in total. Oh, sorry, yeah, 150 or 160 different lessons that I have included in this whole course. So if you're interested, I would suggest having a look at this course as well. You can register, you can get it from my website on vidhipoddar.com. Okay, so I think I will stop here at this stage and probably open up for questions.
Thank you, sir. So now we would invite our moderator, Dr. Uma V.R. ma'am.
I can't hear you very clearly. The sound is very low.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, this is Dr. Uma.
Hi, Uma.
Yes, hello, sir. That was a wonderful session.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, it gave a clear picture on how we have to progress with the systematic literature review and how it's important for the PhD scholars, because most of them who have joined in this platform now today for the session are PhD scholars, and and many of us, including me, we are writing papers on systematic literature review. So it was a great session. So I would open the floor for any Q&As. You can perhaps put it on the chat. First, let us open it for the audience, sir. I also have few questions. So let's open it up for the audiences first. So if you have any questions, can you please put it on the chat box? Anand, can you see the chat box, because I'm not able to see?
Yes.
Yeah, are you able to see? Yeah, okay, right.
So one question which has been posted is how to write the outcomes from systematic literature review.
Okay, yeah, I can see it's Harmandeep Singh has asked the question, how to write the outcomes. So see, basically the outcomes for a systematic review will come from the research question that you have identified for your SLR, right? So if you have a research question, say, for example, what are the key factors that affect something, right? So the outcome of your systematic review would be, after reviewing the literature, we identified X papers, maybe 10 papers that talked about a specific factor. And then you would say that then you would mention that for factor number 1, these were our key observations. 3 or 4 papers talked about this, others talked about this, and so on. So depending upon what your research topic is and what your research question for your SLR is, the writing of the outcome will vary. And it typically goes in the results section of your SLR paper.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There is one more question from Jenny. So Jenny has asked how to set methodology for research. Perhaps how to write the methodology session.
Okay, so I will just go back to my. Let me share screen to answer this question. Okay, so when you're writing the methodology section for your SLR paper, there are a lot of things that you need to cover. Okay, so here you can see module 2 is on methodology, and okay, let me just say. So first of all, you would have to have a flowchart that you have to include in the methodology section of your SLR to show how you're screening the papers. You have to then mention the SLR phases. What are the different phases of your SLR? Planning, conducting, and reporting. What is that? You mentioned the goal of your SLR paper within the methodology to reiterate that this is the goal and this is why we have chosen this methodology. You have to mention the keywords and the search strings that you used, your search strategy, your selection process, the inclusion and exclusion criteria for selecting the primary studies. You then have to go and talk about quality assessment process where you will mention how you excluded some papers, or how you included from the papers that you were included and excluded, that the list of papers that you get, you then apply quality assessment on top of it to assess the quality of the research that is reported in those papers. So you may screen the papers saying that, okay, they meet my inclusion exclusion criteria, I have got them, but then you realize that, oh, maybe although this paper does fit my criteria, the quality of the research is not very good. Okay, so for that we need to do quality assessment of the research papers of the primary studies. You then go on to research protocol validation. This also needs to be reported in the methodology section. And what that means is, when you have developed your Prisma methodology or any other systematic literature review methodology that you're going to follow for your SLR paper, you first document all these different steps. So basically write the methodology part, I would say, or make notes, and then get an external expert in the field to review it, to review your SLR protocol. And they may come back and give you some feedback on, okay, why not you add some other keywords? Why don't you improve your search, change your search strategy by mixing these two keywords which you have not done? Or why not include something else in your criteria? So review protocol validation covers that information, right? Where you before starting the research, you get your research plan reviewed by an external expert. Once that is done, you mention how you do the data extraction. And then there are some examples here. Then we move on to say how we are going to synthesize the research findings from in your methodology section. So you're just going to mention here that we are going to say, for example, we are going to do descriptive statistics. So we are going to do thematic analysis. And then you give justification of why this is ideal or a better approach to do this. So all that information has to be included in the methodology. You also need to report on intercoder reliability or coding validity. You also need to mention about validity threats. So the methodology part of a SLR paper is probably the most strongest section compared to a typical traditional literature review paper. Okay, so see, just by the look of how many things you have to do for writing the methodology section, you can see how comprehensive that part of your SLR paper is. And once you have this level of how do you say, the depth in your methodology, it is very likely that your paper would go for a review at a good journal. It will not be a desk reject. So that is very important to go through this, to have a very strong methodology section. So I hope I have answered your question, Jenny.
Yes, sir. So there was one question. Okay.
One more thing. Do we lead the SLR to new theory or new model? Yes, of course. So that is also, okay, I should not have stopped my screen share. So that part of your question is answered in here, in this part of the course, where I talk about conceptual framework, recommendations, and thematic mapping. Thematic descriptions and thematic mapping. So basically, the objective of your systematic review is not just to summarize or criticize what others have done, but the ideal good systematic review actually results in a new framework, new model, new theory, new insights, recommendations, guidelines, suggestions, something concrete at the end of the systematic review, rather than just synthesizing the research. Okay. So that was Harmandeep's question. Okay.
Yeah, and there is a question from Megha.
My question is, when we write the literature review in the paper, which part
we have to focus
in the thesis? I think all of it can go in your thesis. So you will see many a times the thesis that I review, they would have chapter 2, which is on literature review. That chapter is literally written in the form of a systematic literature review paper. So you can just have your paper included in the chapter 2 of your thesis. David says, when we are starting research on a topic, which is better to start with scoping review or systematic review? Yeah, scoping review is, I would suggest scoping review would be the first first paper that you could do. But many times what happens is when you are starting your PhD, you already have some idea of the research or the research question that you want to focus on. So in that case, you can directly do a systematic literature review because you know what you want to research. But if you do not know what you need to research, in that case, I think it makes sense to do a scoping review. And typically, I see scoping reviews are done maybe by academics more rather than PhD scholars, because for them, scoping or charting the whole literature or that area is more practical or doable compared to for a PhD scholar, because as a PhD scholar, you are very focused with what you want to research on.
Yes. Any more questions? Sir, I do have few questions.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, we come across something like thematic reviews also.
Yeah.
Instead of mentioning a systematic literature review, in the title itself, we see these words, thematic reviews. So how is it different from a systematic literature review or a scoping review?
Yeah, so a thematic review is one of the outcome of a systematic review. So when you do a systematic review, if you are following thematic mapping as a way of synthesizing your literature, then they can call it as a thematic review. So in this,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Yeah, go
on. So should it follow the same protocol as the SLRs also? Should we show it in the research article?
Yeah, they should. Yeah, ideally they should.
Okay.
Because thematic mapping is a thematic review is a method, right? When you are doing a systematic review, you are going to group the literature based upon different themes. So that is basically what is a thematic mapping. And a thematic mapping then gives you a knowledge map or knowledge map of how you are connecting the different themes of literature from your selection of your primary studies.
Okay. So one more question.
Yeah.
When we include the articles, inclusion criteria when we follow, what I have read in most of the SLR papers is that they have included papers from either Scopus indexed journals or Web of Sciences.
Yeah.
Now, can we also include, because sometimes there would have been articles which doesn't fall in any of these with any of these indexing agencies. Is it okay to include? In that case, what would be the proportion?
Sorry, I didn't get your question. So if the papers are not in Scopus and Web of Science, then
or
what?
even ABDC,
Yeah.
is it okay to include those articles for review? Because certain articles would be very good, even though they don't fall, they have not been published in any of these A-listed journals. But is it okay to review those kind of articles also?
Yeah, see, what I suggest in that case is you would have to provide a justification of why you think that paper should be included. So maybe if it is not published in, say, ABDC journal, ABDC ranked journal, or is not indexed in Web of Science or Scopus, but you could say that this paper is highly cited paper in the field.
Okay.
And this paper has contributed a new model or a framework that is being used by a number of other papers which are published in high quality journals. So you would have to find out a way to justify the inclusion of that paper in it. And you can also look at Shimago ranking if it is Q1, Q2, because many a times what would happen is the ABDC ranking is not very exhaustive, right? So it may exclude papers which are, exclude journals, but those journals may be ranked by Shimago. And if it is a Q1 or Q2, I think you can argue that we selected papers because it was a Q1, Q2 ranked journal.
Okay, sir. So there are a few more questions.
Yeah.
From the audience.
Oh, okay. What could be the reliability and validity criteria used for SLR? I don't understand this question. What do you mean by reliability and validity?
Maybe inclusion and exclusion criteria must be. Reliability and validity criteria. No, Nitya, can you please explain your question once again? Or if you can unmute yourself also, it's fine.
We have papers related to quantitative and qualitative research. So I'm just asking in that perspective.
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that again?
The quantitative and qualitative research have many criteria, sir, in terms of reliability and validity. I'm just asking related to it.
Okay. So that question is from methodology perspective, right? So if you are, okay, let me show you something. Where would that be? Basically, that what you're talking about forms part of the qualitative assessment of the primary studies, right? So there are models for deciding which papers fit the qualitative research criteria and quantitative research criteria. And when you are reporting that in your research, in your SLR paper, you can say that we followed these guidelines that says there are 10 criteria for qualitative, for assessing whether a qualitative paper meets the high standards. Similarly, whether a quantitative paper meets the high standards or not. And then you fill up that table with a tick or yes, no, or whatever numbers they have. And then you decide whether that paper meets this the term that you used, reliability and validity. If you email me, I can send you a link to that paper. Otherwise, I can find it now, but it may take time.
Could it be on inclusive or exclusive criteria, sir? In exclusion criteria?
No, see, okay, give me one sec. I'll go back to my course here. So if you look at okay, so inclusion and exclusion criteria is here, right? So if you imagine you have 100 papers, you apply inclusion exclusion criteria, your paper number is reduced to say 50. Yeah, you then come to your quality assessment process. Okay, let me see if their example is here or not. Okay, this paper is standard quality assessment criteria for evaluating primary research papers from a variety of fields. So maybe read this paper it will help you answer that question. So after you complete inclusion exclusion criteria, then you come to quality assessment. Okay, so a quality assessment is this is one example you can briefly see here. Quality assessment table I have. Yeah, no, but I will copy this in the chat window. Where is it? Chat window. Okay, so if you read this paper, it will give you it will help you with the question that you have. So inclusion exclusion criteria and quality assessment is two different things. Inclusion exclusion you do first, you reduce the number of papers by that process, and after that you apply quality assessment criteria to further refine the number of papers that you would be using. So quality assessment basically assesses the quality of the research that is done. Inclusion exclusion criteria assesses the whether the research answers the question, answers your SLR question, but maybe the research is not thorough enough. You know, the quality of research is not very good. So that assessing the quality of the research is done after the inclusion and exclusion criteria is done.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Nowadays, I find a difference in the way methodology is reported in SLR papers. Like in previously, they used to mention databases as Scopus, Web of Sciences and all. But
Yeah.
nowadays, they are reporting the journal databases. Like they say they have extracted papers from Emerald or from Taylor and Francis, like that.
Yeah.
Now, which one is advisable, sir? Or Google Scholar, like that? So how do we report it?
I think it really doesn't matter, to be frank.
Okay.
You can have both. You can have both. I mean, you can mention that because databases will include all the different journals and publishers. But sometimes they say we got papers from Science Direct or Elsevier, Wiley. It's just, it's something that can go into your descriptive, sorry, just one second. So if you look at this part here in the methodology, you can have descriptive statistics, right? So in the descriptive statistics, you can decide, you know, what all information you want to report here. But it could be general coding, different journals that are published, how many papers are published, how many papers did you select from different journals, and which publishers, which, to be frank, you know, it does not add too much value to the SLR paper. I'm not a very big fan of the descriptive statistics part.
Okay.
But yeah, journals, people, authors do write about those things.
So it doesn't make much difference. That's what you wanted to say.
Yeah. So for me, I think what would matter is if you tell me your keywords and your search strings and where you search that from. Right? If you use the keyword and search string and searched on, say, Science Direct, then I would want to know that. But if you just searched it on Web of Science or Scopus, then I want to know that, because idea is that I should be able to replicate your studies.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So whatever can help me answer that, I think that should be sufficient that way.
Okay. So whenever I ask my scholar to start with the literature review, the first question they ask me is, how many articles do we review? This is the question they ask.
Yeah.
Is there any limitation, or is there any optimum size, or is it like it depends upon the research question? What would be your answer to this?
Yeah, I think it very much depends upon the research question. If there is a lot of literature that's been already published on a specific research question, then you may have to review 100 or 200 papers. But if it is only a very niche area, then there would be very limited number of literature there. And then what would also depend is where all you are searching the literature. If your selection criteria is very stringent, that you're only going to select A star and A publications or Q1 publications, maybe you will not find a lot of literature, or maybe you will find a lot of literature. You don't know. So I think one way that you could answer your scholars is that you should mention that they should reach a level of saturation when finding literature. So whenever they read a new paper and they look at the reference, so what I would suggest is ask them to start with papers from 2022, right, this year, and then go backwards. So look at the reference list of the 2022 paper and see if there are any relevant papers from that reference list. So it's a kind of a reverse snowballing approach for finding relevant papers. I would say that could be the way to for them to start. And once they begin, like I've seen, what would be challenging is for you to make them stop. Otherwise, every time they would come up with more and more papers, and then you would need some way to kind of say, okay, that is enough, or and for that, scoping is very important. So if your research question is very clear that this is what I want to find out, and then if this paper does not answer that question, then just exclude it. Many a times you will feel the feel the need, that, oh, I should not miss out on this literature, let me just keep it. But if it is not answering the question, then it is not adding value. You may keep it in a side, another collection, that good to have papers, but it's not part of your SLR.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
There is one question from Mr. Suresh.
Yeah.
Mr. Suresh only. So the question is how to determine the keywords for a research topic.
How to determine keywords? Okay. Determining keywords can be done from your research questions itself. So you can, if you have listed your research question, right? One way would be to just pick keywords from that. That is one thing. Second is you can look at existing SLR papers that are published and see what keywords they have used. That could be another step. The other way is you can use these, what do you call that? Like PICO and Spider, and these are different methods that are used to identify keywords, but I don't personally use them very much myself. But you could use them, and there are. I can send it to you later. There's one very nice paper that talks about all these different ways of deriving keywords. But for me, I think as long as it is a keyword that keywords and the synonyms of these keywords that are included from your research question, I think that should get the job done. So there are two ways, right? One is you put a very broad keyword, right, which means it will give you everything. And then you can screen. So if I'm searching in the Web of Science, I may search, say, I don't know, blockchain. That's my research area, right? I search blockchain. And then I can then go into refine search, and then I put another keyword there, and I could refine, say, health. So it will show me health and blockchain. And then I look at the research paper titles that are coming, and by looking at the titles, I think I should have this keyword, so let me just put that and refine it further. So it is like a iterative process. It is not like, there you go, these are your keywords, and do the search and done. The finding of the keywords, building the search string is a evolving process, and you kind of spend some good amount of time doing trial and error till you get that perfect sweet spot of your keywords and your search strings.
So should we look at also synonyms? For instance, like insurance.
Yeah.
Now in certain countries, we call it as insurance, but in
Yeah.
certain other countries, they would use the term assurance. Now, in that case, should we look at synonyms also? Because
Yeah,
you would-
I would suggest using synonyms is a common practice when searching for keywords.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes.
using different wildcards as well, along with the keywords and synonyms.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Mm.
Any more questions we have?
So this is Anand here, and I have one question from my side.
Yeah.
So we use many qualitative softwares like Bdoos and NVivo. So can we use any qualitative analysis as a part of structure in this SLR methods?
Yeah, you could use because NVivo is used for literature review anyway, right? So you can use NVivo for synthesizing literature. I personally use Excel because I was brought up that way when I was doing my research. Those days NVivo was not that popular, or we didn't have access to NVivo. But nowadays it is a common tool to use. So my students do use NVivo. And yeah, you could use NVivo. Some of the students here, they use Power BI as well to go even one level higher in terms of organizing the literature in a very searchable manner. So yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Anand, do we have any more questions?
Sir? So good evening,
So
sir.
I think if other questions are not there, then we will conclude the session.
Anand, someone has unmuted and they want to ask question, I think.
So
Yes, sir.
we don't
So
see any more
yes.
questions. So we have come to the end of the session.
Anand, there is somebody asking a question.
Yeah.
So dear sir, thank you so much for
Anand,
accepting our invite to be the resource person for today's session. The host muted you.
Can you hear us, Anand?
I think he's not
Yes.
able to hear us. Anand?
Ma'am, is my voice audible now?
Yes, yes. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Anand, someone was trying to ask a question.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Can
please
I?
go on. Yes, yes, please go on.
Yeah, thank you. So good evening, sir. My name is Zuha. I'm doing my final year PG right now, planning
Yeah.
to do my PhD. So can you please give me one piece of advice, because I'm a complete beginner. Okay. So what should I do now to do the research, like quickly in the sense, not delaying so much, and also to go in a systematic manner? Any piece of advice for a student?
So you said you are in your final year of your postgrad program, right?
Yes,
And want to do PhD.
yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So in your postgrad program, are you currently doing any research? Do you
Yes,
have to?
sir. Dissertation. I'm doing a research.
Okay. I think that then the first thing I would suggest is you can publish 2 research papers. One should be a systematic literature review paper, and the second one should be an empirical paper based upon the research that you are currently doing as part of your dissertation. So those 2 papers you should aim to publish, and have a look at my YouTube video for the 5-part webinar series on writing systematic literature review. That will get you started. If you want even more guidance, then I showed you my SLR course. You can register for that. But make sure that you stick to this and complete your SLR paper at least, because completing an SLR paper is relatively easy if you follow the steps that I covered, right? And also to I mean, not saying that empirical paper is not is hard to write, but SLR is relatively easy and structured. As long as you have identified the papers that you want to cover in the review, you can complete the review SLR paper by following the steps.
So,
Okay.
So and one more thing.
Yeah.
This systematical review, this applies to any kind of discipline, or it applies to only particular kind of discipline? Like
No,
I belong to commerce.
It applies to every discipline.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. There's another question. I have had network. I don't know if you covered this. Would you recommend bibliometry via RStudio for SLR? Okay, so there's a message from Shreya asking whether a bibliometrics via RStudio for SLR. So first of all, I'm not a very big fan of bibliometric research, right? It doesn't tell me much. It only tells me who is what, where are papers published in which country, and what is the connection between different authors. And it's good to see all these different nice graphs and figures and stuff in the bibliometric paper. But from a research knowledge point of view, it doesn't tell me much. I mean, I can only find out probably where is research being done, and does it tell me much about that? Not really. I mean, that's my perspective. So if you are doing bibliometric research, then probably I'm not the right person to answer that for you. I probably demotivate you if you're doing doing a bibliometric paper. But what I've seen is some SLR papers do cover a little bit of bibliometrics, like in the descriptive statistics part of the research. Of their write-up. So yeah, that could be one thing that I suggest you can have. But yeah, not a really big fan of bibliometrics, to be frank. And to the person who was talking to me before about what advice I can give you for your PhD starting. So I think planning is very important, for your PhD research, for your overall PhD. So plan your research properly, and also for planning is equally important whether you're doing PhD or if you're writing a research paper, right? So plan properly, identify what all things you want to write, or what all activities you want to do, and do it in that order. And that was kind of the main reason why I built up Elixir. The reason for building Elixir was that to give you a platform where you can go and just fill up. These are the things that I want to do in this order, and I have done that. I have got a tick that okay, I have to do these 20 things this week or this month. I have first of all taken the step to put all these 20 things in a plan, and then I'm just going to do one thing after the other, and going to finish off all these things. So planning is kind of very much important than the actual research, because if you plan properly, I know for sure that you will complete whatever you have planned. But if there is no plan, you will not go anywhere. Okay, there are a few more questions. Suresh, as a beginner, should I start with scoping review or SLR? I would say SLR would be better because it would be more focused. You'll have one question and one or more questions, and then you can find the literature which is answering that specific question, so that the quantity of literature that you have to deal with will be relatively small compared to if you're doing a scoping review.
Sir, can we write to you, because we have so many queries coming?
Yeah.
So can we write to you so that you can send us the responses, and then we can send it to these candidates also who have registered for this session? Is it okay with you?
Yeah, if it is not too much, then yeah, I can try to reply to.
Yeah, we'll pick the most important ones, and perhaps we can send it in a couple of days or so, and then you can give us your response. Yes, sir. Yeah. So thank you so much, sir. That was wonderful session, and more important is you answered with so much of patience and elaborately also. So thank you so much for your for all these insights, sir.
Yeah, no worries, no problem at all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Over to Anand.
Thank you, ma'am. Is my voice audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear sir, thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invite to be the resource person for today's session on systematic literature review. So this method is gaining popularity, especially in the recent times. And many scholarly journals are also accepting research articles which follows a systematic literature review. Moreover, the session was very informative, where the objectives of systematic literature review was very clearly explained. The methodology and the eligibility criteria to conduct a systematic literature review was shown and explained step by step. We got new insights to draft an abstract for a manuscript which follows a systematic literature review, which was very new to us. And we could also understand the importance of considering a few important factors, such as keywords, research questions, search results, database, removing the redundancies, relevancy, and finally setting the articles to conduct the systematic literature review. So I thank our session moderator also, Dr. Uma VR. Ma'am, thank you so much for moderating the event. On behalf of the Department of Commerce, sir, we thank you. And we are looking forward to invite you for other future research sessions organized by the Department of Commerce. And I extend my warm thank you to all the participants who provoked thoughtful questions and meaningful questions. And I hope this session was very informative to all of us, and it has given an opportunity to enhance our knowledge. Thank you all so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Anand. Thanks, Uma.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks everyone who attended the session. And if you have any questions, I have left my email address here, contact@vidipodda.com. So just email me any questions related to SLR or Elixir or anything, anything in general about research as well. And do subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I'll just put my link here. Okay, and look at the 5-part webinar series on doing a systematic literature review.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, sir. I'll do it. Dear participants, it's a very kind request to join the inaugural ceremony by 6:30. The links have been already sent to you. So we look forward to see you during the inaugural session. Thank you.
Anand, Anand, that's a different link, is it?
Yes, ma'am, that's a different link.
Okay, right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.